and this financial event seems to be correlated with the release of various suppressed technologies in the aftermath, and you are certainly one of the leading voices on this front. And go ahead.
Yeah, well, no, we're actually, working on concrete projects at this point.
Yeah, I am very aware that you've done that, and I've actually, as you know, been in contact with some of the people who contacted you originally when this all got started. Specifically, someone in the Japanese royalty. Okay, so I gotta say, Benjamin, that I really think that you've taken some abuse on the internet that's unwarranted, as does anybody who's really bringing out the truth. It's like the entrenched power interests have a stake in trying to ridicule you to some degree. And I just want to say that as one of the more respected researchers in this field, and how many people read my stuff, that everybody knows that my perspective has always been that you're coming from a place of integrity. And I just want to, again, commend you on the ability that you've had to toe the line and stay on this very difficult path, given the opposition that you face and the ridicule that you're inevitably going to face when you break out of the mainstream and go into these kinds of subjects.
Well, you see, they might ridicule me, but they always refuse to debate me directly because they know I would crush them with facts and truth. So, I don't really pay attention to these cowardly people and these disinformation agents out on the net. They're just not, I don't have the time. And I do deal directly, I really do have direct contact with very important movers and shakers, and we are working on a new financial system. And no matter what they do, they can't stop it. So,
What do your debunkers typically say in terms of how in the world you could have gotten access to David Rockefeller in an interview? I mean, what's the typical skeptical attack that they could even give you on that point? Because, obviously, there you are, interviewing the guy.
Look, the David Rockefeller thing was, people think he must be an insider. Well, no, what happened was, he came here to ask for money from the emperor, and he appeared at a book signing at a bookstore in Japan. They suddenly closed the bookstore, a bunch of security came in, and there was David Rockefeller, and somebody took a picture of him and put it on the net. And somebody forwarded that picture to me, saying David Rockefeller's in town. And I know that when bigwigs come, they usually stay at the Hotel Okura, which is across the street from the U.S. Embassy.
Ah.
So I waited until 10 o'clock at night, which is, I figured when all his handlers would have gone to bed, but he'd still be awake. I phoned the hotel and said, could I please talk to David Rockefeller? And they put me through to his room.
Oh, my God.
And I said, can I interview you? And he said, yes. And I went the next morning with a camera from Iran TV and interviewed him.
That's incredible. So this was not facilitated by your contacts within the Japanese royalty or anything. This was just something you did on your own initiative.
Yeah, as a journalist, I knew this. I've done this before with people like Paul Volcker,
Right.
You know where they stay, and if you call in English instead of Japanese, they think you must be an insider, and they just put you straight through to these people.
Wow, unbelievable.
But the other thing is, I could have told the Japanese sort of underworld types, and they could have dragged them off somewhere, but, I'm not a gangster, I'm a journalist, so I didn't tell them, okay? I didn't let those dangerous people know where he was.
Well, I think that's a good thing. I don't think that at this point it's going to be constructive to, as Christopher Story calls it, horizontalize anyone. But there is going to be some tribunals. If you read Christopher Story's article, which you endorsed recently in one of your latest posts, he's basically saying that the floodgates have been opened and Interpol is now free to work in the U.S., and that as of December 6th, the whole thing is starting to be shut down. This Operation Still Point that was run by the Bush administration.
Yeah, I know. I have my own sources who I have verified to be, senior members of the Rothschild family and a person from the remote viewing outfit of the CIA and other, I have my own personal high-level contacts. So if I write something that's the same as Mr. Story, it means that I have confirmed it with my own sources. I would not, write something like, if you're a journalist and it appears in writing, it means somebody has beaten you to the story.
That's true.
So anything I write, I have confirmed with sources I believe to be reliable. And if it turns out to be wrong, I'll issue a correction. In fact, one thing I said that George Bush Sr. Was killed, but what I really was likely said we haven't confirmed it. But what I was able to confirm at the time of the Fort Hood shootings, independently, was that there were a lot of VIP limousines there, that there were many contradictory stories about how many shooters there were, and that George Bush Jr. and his wife immediately rushed to the hospital afterwards, and that, the MI6 people were telling me there had been an attempt on his life. But then you see him appear at a football game, and what they told me, and there's a lot of stuff I hear that I don't write because I just don't find it credible, but what they told me was that they had replaced him with a clone, and it was an old and not very good quality one. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, and I don't want to put something like that out because, like I say, extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. But we have confirmed that he's very senile. Maybe he forgets what he said 3 minutes ago, and he's no longer the real power. It's his wife. And the other thing about Henry Kissinger, again, my sources tell me that. Now, they may put out an old video of him on TV to try to discredit me, but until I confirm otherwise, I believe he was taken out.
Well, there's no question that the action has really reached its pinnacle here. There is such depth of data in Christopher Story's presentation, and it obviously is correlating independently with what you're saying. I do think it's unfortunate that he chose to attack you based on some sort of paranoia that just because your Black Dragon Society has,
obviously, he's providing good information, but obviously he has a few personality problems, and I think it's best not to, get involved in some kind of tit-for-tat argument with the man. But if libel is issued, I have to issue a correction. That's all.
Right. And what I will say is that when you recently, in your post from the 13th of January, disclosed the actual nature and structure of the Black Dragon Society, I mean, it basically seems as if you've got just about everybody on Earth in all the varying factions singularly unified against this Bush-run cartel of the so-called Rockefeller faction. That seems to be what's happened here. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, there's basically, we're dealing with the royal families of Europe, the Tool Society, and the people who own the printing machines for money worldwide, except for the Bank of China.
Okay.
And, basically they've been ruled by terror and murder for hundreds of years, and they've been very scared. And so the minute some people came out with some actual, backing, in other words, some heavies standing behind you, so you can speak the truth without worrying about being immediately killed, then all sorts of people popped out of the woodwork and said, oh yes, we hate those guys, please help us, and we're not with them. This is the sort of thing that happened. But it's clearly not over. They still have a lot of power because they're still, you're reading all that nonsense in the corporate propaganda media still.
Correct.
And the Washington show is still going on with it all, the continuing wars and murder and stuff. So it's not over. But yes, there are very serious forces aligning themselves, saying, look, we've been making a mess running this planet. And we need to change how we behave as a species. And I think that consensus is getting very powerful now.
Well, you list, I just want to read a little excerpt for people who may not have been to your website of the membership that you listed. You say, our membership includes high-level members of the Rothschild family who want to use some of their gold to pay off U.S. external debts. They agree to help the planet so long as they can continue to live in their big castles and be surrounded by servants. We say, okay, why not? They can mobilize much of the British Empire, so let's work with them. Now, you then say P2 Masonic Lodge in Italy control the Vatican, the Mafia, and they have also agreed to try to help save the planet so long